Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines this hour. Schools and shelters have reportedly been struck by Israel in Gaza, killing at least 50. Meanwhile, an Oxfam report reveals that only 12 aid trucks have entered northern Gaza amid the continuing humanitarian crisis in the region. Russian President Vladimir Putin has pledged to retaliate following drone attacks in his territory from Ukraine. The Slovakian Prime Minister has visited the Russian leader amid reports of North Korean deaths on the Russian front line. Turkey's foreign minister has met with the new Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara. Hakan Fidan has called for the lifting of global sanctions upon Syria while cementing Turkey's commitment to support the new leadership. Following the Magdeburg Christmas market attack in Germany, where 5 people were killed and hundreds others were injured, a suspect has been arrested for murder. A Saudi national in his 50s has been remanded, while his historical social media posts have been investigated. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to retake control of the Panama Canal. He warned of the potential Chinese influence on the passage. The Panamanian president has responded with a sharp rebuttal to the comments. A small plane has crashed in Brazil, killing all 10 people on board while injuring more than a dozen people on the ground. This deadly crash in the south of Brazil comes a day after a deadly bus crash that killed 38 people. Russian President Vladimir Putin has vowed a swift retaliation following a Ukrainian drone strike in Kazan, Tatarstan. The damage attacked residential buildings and an industrial facility, though officials reported no casualties. Putin warned that attempts to destroy Russia would be met with multiple times more destruction. In Moscow, Putin met with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico to discuss gas transit as their contract with Ukraine nears expiry. Fico criticised Kyiv's opposition to the deal and shifted Slovakia's stance towards Russia. Meanwhile, South Korea claimed that over 1,100 North Korean troops fighting in Russia have been killed or wounded. Kyiv revealed that these soldiers were issued fake documents to hide their origin. North Korea continues to provide weapons and manpower to Russia, escalating tensions in the region. We're first going to go to our correspondent, Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, I'd like to speak to you about these comments from Vladimir Putin and go into some more specifics, because there was strong language used in rebuttal and response to the attacks that his country has seen over the past couple of days.
Well, absolutely, Josh. It is a very tit-for-tat situation. The war has been going, for the last 2 years. This Russia-Ukraine war is nowhere. There is nowhere it is in a sight. It is seen ending. Because recently, what if Ukraine attacks, then Russia retaliates. If Russia attacks, which it usually does, Russia is actually aggressor in this case, then Ukraine responds. So it is a very complex situation when we talk about Russia-Ukraine war. Recently, this is a sort of a hypocritical thing. On one side, Vladimir Putin says that he is ready to compromise on war with Ukraine and he will hold talks with the newly elected US President Donald Trump. But on the other hand, he is a warning of a retaliation of a missile attack on the Russian city. So it is a very complex situation that needs to be monitored, Josh. Yes, back to you in the studios.
Yes, and we are now joined by 2 guests. Firstly, Gilbert Doctorow, international relations and Russian affairs expert. And we also have Glenn Grant, who is a former advisor to Defence Minister of Ukraine. Glenn, I'd like to come to you first. We're looking at a situation here where a retaliation has been promised. In terms of the reaction in Ukraine and the feeling within Ukraine, is there fear amongst people that the attacks could be on a level that we've seen previously in terms of large amounts of drones, missiles and potentially the use of an intercontinental or ballistic missile?
No, not at all. The general, and I was there last week, so I can talk with a certain degree of certainty that people have accepted that what Putin says and what Putin does are 2 different things. Everybody's expecting attacks. They've been expecting attacks since the war started, and they're getting them. But they don't think there's going to be anything worse than what they're getting at the moment. So it's just bad. The disappointment is not a worry about Putin, but disappointment is with the West not being quicker in providing support.
Looking at the feeling within Ukraine, I want to come back to you on that point. Is there no sort of fear amongst the people, or is it something that, like you say, they've come to terms with in terms of the fact that these attacks are going to happen, but surely a threat is still a threat, and there must be some concern amongst people?
Yeah, no, well, the threat is adjusted for in people's minds. If they know that if they hear from the from the air defense people that a rocket is coming their way, then they go downstairs into the metro or wherever they can hide into the cellars. So there is common sense on that side, but it's no worse now than it was five or 6 months ago, for example. And what is Putin going to do differently? If he throws more missiles, then there's going to be a gap between those missiles coming, because he hasn't got a bottomless pit of missiles to throw at Ukraine.
Gilbert Doctorow, I'm going to come to you. In terms of the response from Putin and the threats that have been made, for destruction is a word that has been used, do you think that the response will be proportionate in regards to the amount of drones that were sent over from Ukraine? And also, do you think that the impact on the front lines will be seen as well? Of course, the North Korean soldiers are there fighting on the front line. How do you think both of these fronts, a front from the air but also a front on the ground, may step up now because of Putin's comments?
Is this directed to me?
Yes, please, Gilbert. Thank you.
All right, please. Well, I disagree with the comments of the first participant that there's no difference. The Russians have now destroyed over 80% of the power generation of capacity of Ukraine. They have forced massive cutbacks in supply of energy across the country. Yesterday was the largest flow of Ukrainians across the border leaving the country that we have seen since the war began. So don't say that they're hiding in the metro. You can't live in the metro. You can avoid a single attack, yes, but you can't live there, and you certainly can't live on the 10th floor of your apartment house if you have no water and no electricity and no heat. And people are getting the message they're leaving. To compare what the Ukrainians have done in their strike on Kazan with what the Russians are doing is to demonstrate perfectly how this war has been pursued. The Russians have basically gone after the Ukrainian military. They have killed or wounded seriously, perhaps as many as 1 million in the last 2 years, of whom 560,000 were wounded or killed in the last year, of whom 45,000 were killed in the gambit of Mr. Zelensky in the Kursk province of Russia. This is devastating for the country in every sense, demographically, in terms of the economy. The Russian attacks that may come will depend, in each case, on the seriousness of the threat that Russia perceives from every tit-for-tat response from Ukraine. What the Ukrainians did, as I said, in their attack on Kazan was perfectly in line with their whole strategy of public relations war rather than kinetic war. They have attacked residential buildings. They attacked a high-rise house in Kazan to provide for viral social media pictures of their striking that building, and similar to the 9/11 attack on the World Towers. We watched their drone explode in the midst of that building. The net result, which the social media did not post, was what happened to that building. No one was killed, and it was a rather small damage. However, it made a wonderful show, and it seems as though the Ukrainian military goes for big shows and not for big actions, because they don't have the wherewithal to do big actions. Their attacks on the Russian military, using ATACMS, using HIMARS, have been negligible, because they simply don't have the wherewithal. When my colleague says that the Russians are running out of missiles, I'm sorry, I disagree entirely. The latest estimate coming out of the States is that the Russians have a production capacity of 25 of their Oreshniks per month, 300 a year, or as they said with some humor on Russian television, enough for each
Thank you,
European
Gilbert Doctorow.
capital.
We're going to have to move on, but thank you very much for joining us. Also, thank you very much for joining us, Glenn Grant. We're now moving to President-elect Donald Trump, who has sparked controversy by threatening to reclaim US control over the Panama Canal, accusing Panama of overcharging for its use. Speaking at a rally in Arizona, Trump warned of potential Chinese influence over the canal and demanded its swift return if moral and legal principles were not upheld. Panama's president, Jose Raul Molino, responded sharply, stating that the canal belongs to Panama and its sovereignty is non-negotiable. He also dismissed Trump's claims of Chinese control, pointing out that administration rates are fair and transparent. Trump has previously hinted at territorial expansions, including purchasing Greenland and even using about turning Canada into a US state. While Trump's remarks reflect his hardline diplomatic stance, his ability to act on such claims remains highly questionable under international law. We are joined again by Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, I'd like to speak to you now about the significance of the Panama Canal. It is a vital trade route and it cuts hours off, but why is it so important and why is Trump making these comments?
Well, Josh, we need to know that Panama Canal is a vital link between Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, as it reduces the distance between the two oceans by thousands of nautical miles. It is a cornerstone of the global maritime transportation in the sea. Because when Panama Canal wasn't in existence, the ship had to sail all over from Horn of Cape Horn, which took an absorbently more time, amounting to 2 months. So it is very instrumental in facilitating the global trade. Yes, Josh, back to you in the studio.
We're now joined by Dr. Sharad Kohli, a senior economist. Thank you for joining us. I would like to speak to you specifically about these comments from Trump and looking at the prices that he's talking about. We've seen prices of the Panama Canal crossing fluctuate given droughts. They can sometimes reach up to over £4 million. But is this a drum that Trump should be banging, and is it one that's really important to his economic plan for the country? Dr. Sharad Kohli.
I think Panama Canal has got a dual importance. One is from, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, so Panama Canal for President Trump has got dual importance. One is on the economic front. About 14,000 vessels pass through this canal every year. And as Aditya was saying, strategically connects the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. So saving, billions of dollars of fuel, and the time which the ships could have burned by taking the circle. So it's a very important strategic geographical route via water. Second is the security concern, because US knows that if it is able to have control over Panama Canal, it will be able to choke economically, the roots of countries who try and meddle into policies which are against the United States. And the moment he found that there's a Chinese influence on the Panama Canal because of Chinese influence on the international trade, we all know that China is primarily a merchandise export-driven economy as far as the West is concerned. I think President-elect Trump wants to keep his control on the canal so that no country is able to take advantage in future and dominate the Panama Canal, which was built by, we should not forget that Panama Canal was built by United States back in 1904 and 1914. It's been a long time since the US did it. So something of an asset which United States created, it doesn't want any other country, especially like China, with whom we are now anticipating a very hot trade war after President Trump comes. He's been threatening tariffs on Mexico, on Canada, on China. So he doesn't want any country to have a domination there. And he wants to control Panama Canal entirely.
Thank you, Dr. Kohli. We appreciate your time. We'll move on now and we'll continue to give you the updates on Trump as he moves into his inauguration period on the 20th of January. Now to a tragedy in Gramado, Brazil, as a plane crash kills all 10 people on board, including businessman Luis Claudio Galezi and his family. 17 people on the ground are injured, and the crash is believed to be caused by bad weather occurring minutes after takeoff. Here is the report.
At least 38 people have been confirmed dead in a tragic traffic collision in the Brazilian state of Minas Gerais. The crash, which involved a bus and a truck, occurred early in the morning near the city of Teofilo Otoni. Fire department officials, who were among the first responders to the scene, confirmed the devastating incident. The bus, which had departed Sao Paulo with 45 passengers on board, reportedly blew a tire, causing the driver to lose control. The bus then crashed into a truck, and shortly after, another car collided with the bus.
No local, o ônibus que seguia sentido Teófilo Otoni pela BR-116 perdeu o controle, colidiu com uma carreta, onde veio a se incendiar. Posteriormente, um veículo Fiat Argo, que vinha também sentido Teófilo Otoni, colidiu na traseira também desse bitrem. Felizmente, as vítimas do Fiat Argo todas foram resgatadas com vida. Todavia, tivemos uma grande quantidade de vítimas carbonizadas no ônibus.
Governor Romeu Zema of Minas Gerais announced a full mobilization to support victims and their families after the tragic BR-116 crash near Teofilo Otoni. He stated that security forces had been working since dawn, and he made military aircraft available to aid rescue efforts. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That is all we have time for. We'll be back shortly with more of the latest international news updates.